Our first faculty spotlight is Nicole Cervini. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. And Nicole is geography faculty. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio out loud. Dr. Nicole Cervini has been engaging first and second year students in undergraduate research experiences for more than 10 years. After leading an NSF-sponsored undergraduate research experience, I know what that means now, URE, that investigated cultural resource and conservation of rock art inscriptions at the Petrified Forest National Park, Dr. Cervini served on the Council for Undergraduate Research by participating in a dozen workshops across the country, encouraging undergraduate research experiences for two-year college faculty and students across the country. And Nicole, would you like to share? You want to navigate and share?
Sure.
Okay.
If that's easier, I can do it either way.
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay. Going to share my screen, of course. Stand by. All right. I think we've got it here. Can you guys see my screen or?
Yeah.
And is it in presentation mode? That's the other question.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You see the one slide.
You see one slide. Let's see. It is not in presentation mode. All right, maybe you should share it for me.
Okay.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen. How about you share it for me?
You got it.
All right, let me see.
Oh no, that's sorry, I clicked on the wrong. You guys can click on that link and you can see one of the projects that I linked to the slide deck. I forgot. Okay, here we go.
All right, now I got to get back to you. All right, so here we go. And so thank you, Megan, for that great introduction. It was fantastic, and it's exactly what I have really been involved in. So I am right now trying to figure out, why does it always change everything when you're looking? Please change slide for me. All right, so a little bit about myself. Some of these pictures that you're seeing right now are from the Petrified Forest, where I took students for a series of 4 years. Many things came out of this. In this picture, there are at least 4 students that changed their degree. And change their degree into the geosciences in some way. And actually, the one who's in the very front of the picture, her son is currently in my class right now, which is really exciting. In the upper right picture is a particular petroglyph, just one boulder that has all different kinds of footprints of different kinds of animals on it. And one of our students followed that path. He was from biology, got involved in this research project, and became employee of the National Park Service in their biodiversity program. So basically, when you engage students in a way that's meaningful to them, it's much more powerful and long lasting. And this particular experience went far beyond what I actually wrote the grant to do. And that was a really powerful thing. And you don't necessarily need a grant to have this kind of experience. South Mountain Park is 15 minutes away from our campus, and we can do the same thing there. So it's really, and surprisingly, some of our students think South Mountain Park is really far away. So introducing them to their own environment is really a powerful tool. Next slide, please. So when we ask what is undergraduate research, what we end up coming up with is a huge definition, because undergraduate research varies from institution to institution and actually class to class. And so is it taking people outside? Is it getting them involved in the literature review? Is it getting them involved in a lab? And so these are a lot of questions that we ask, but when we look at the mission of two-year colleges, undergraduate research fits within our mission, but most of us don't identify it that way. Most of the time, two-year colleges are identified as groups who have to meet the needs of the community, but are not viewed as research-centric locations. And so when somebody talks about research, they're talking about, big, powerful impacts to discipline. And that's not always what research is. And in order to get to that point, we have to start somewhere. And my personal view is that we start earlier. Because students do not need to be indoctrinated into your discipline to do powerful research. And sometimes doing that research is a way to encourage them to be involved in your discipline in the first place. So next slide, please. All right, so I'd like to talk again about what is undergraduate research. Megan talked about some things associated with what is undergraduate research for the Council on Undergraduate Research and what is it for two-year colleges, what is it for us. I want to delve into that a little bit deeper because this is where we get confused about whether we're doing research or not. I'd like to talk a little bit about what it looks like at that national landscape and how we might consider bringing research into our own classrooms. Next slide. So this first definition came from probably the fourth or fifth workshop that a small team of people from MCC started with. So undergraduate research involves creative and active learning. What we wanted to do is be inclusive of more than just the STEM disciplines because research is done across our campuses. And all of our students are taking introductory courses to find out where they want to go in their life. And so we want to engage students with something that's real world, information driven, inquiry based, and provides a tangible output. But the argument comes then is what is tangible? Is that tangible to your discipline? Is that tangible to the institution? Or most importantly, is it tangible to that student? And so we kept talking about undergraduate research at the community college is not setting the world on fire, although there's an absolute ability that a student's project could set a whole discipline's world on fire, right? But setting the world on fire for that student is the most important thing. And I mean fire in the most great way possible, like getting them excited about what they're doing, right? And so that's what we really want. And so that tangible output for them could be that it just inspired something in them. We want them to be able to present and get that experience as well. And so my question to you personally is how do you define undergraduate research? And I want you to think about that. And then when we get into the discussion, please share what it means to you. Because that I think is where we start with our definition for the college. And we come as a group together to really help each other achieve those things with our students. Next slide. So when we think about community college research, most of the faculty that we talked to throughout all of these workshops really came at research as it was a value-added component. It was just one piece of the many, many things they do. And it's not really at two-year colleges part of a research agenda, right? Or Arizona State University is a Research One institution. It is their agenda. Teaching is sort of the secondary component. So we want that value added component to what we do. Many of the projects that are taught on our campus are projects, case studies, all these other things that we don't label as research necessarily, but they could even come from service or service learning programs. A colleague that used to be at MCC that's now up in Washington, they found a problem with a slope that was deteriorating near a condominium, and the condominium association hired her class to measure the rate of slope decay. And she said, upfront and honest, these are students we're going to tell you something and you do with it what you will. But it was something that they could do in their own backyard and really find meaning in the information that they had to learn in a basic geoscience class, right? Most of the time when we're talking about undergraduate research, it's an individual or small group and not part of an institutionalized program. My hopes and dreams for undergraduate research after all the experience that I've had is that MCC finds a way to institutionalize the program. And just like we have an honors office, we have an undergraduate research office, because the other component is people think that only honor students maybe can do undergraduate research, but I find that undergraduate research experiences in my own course really light the fire under my B and C students, because they're finally asked questions about what they think and what they can do. And it doesn't matter if they were always at the top on the dean's list or what have you. So it's really a powerful thing. Honor students are going to do it and they're going to do it well, and it's going to be a great experience for them. But those B and C students really light up when they get an experience like this. So it helps to bring up the overall average. Next slide, please. So another thing we hear from a lot of faculty at community colleges is fear of the term research. Sometimes it's our own stress from the experience we had as graduate students, and sometimes it's our lack of understanding of what it was like to be a new researcher, because the last thing we did was a really amazing research experience. So we don't want to scare off the students. So sometimes we go with project instead of research. There's a fear for us of getting started. How do you get started? How do you fit research into your huge curriculum base? It's a big question. Sometimes it's viewed as something only scientists and engineers do, when in fact I took a 3D printing class on our campus for fun. And we did a full-on research project like I would have done as a grad student by printing out these pieces of plastic on each of our individual 3D printers, which they have in the office, and then testing them to failure. Think about how important that would be for somebody who is a 3D printer, maybe printing dental implants, to know the structure of the thing they're printing and where it might fail. Right. And then that would make them a better tech in that dental industry. And whoever needed the printed tooth will have one that can last, especially when they're eating hard candy like I like. The biggest problems, our biggest challenges, not really problems, but barriers to really doing research are finding time, space, and funding. Right. And so sometimes those are hindrances. But what really excites me about a two-year college is that it doesn't take a lot of money for us to have an effective project. And so if we can identify that and assist each other in getting there, that's even better, because our impact on teaching is enormous. I don't know about many of you. I'm looking at Christine because she's right in front of me, right center in my screen. But we've been here a while, right? I've been here for 21 years, and every semester I teach at least 2 sessions of introduction to physical geography, right? There are only so many ways to teach about humidity. So when I can introduce a new way of coming at it, and by doing research and getting hands-on and really experiencing what I'm trying to get at with the students, it's so much more enriching even for me, right? And so that's one of the powers of doing undergraduate research in your course. Next slide, please. All right, so the other challenge is we have a stigma, whether you know it or not, that our students think that we're nerdy, right? We've been in school forever because we like it, but they don't necessarily want to be in school forever. So we have to overcome that and convince them that what we're doing can be fun, and it's not a, lifelong sentence, even though we've chosen that. So it's one of the things that we have to do. Next slide, please. All right, so this was an older version of the Kerr definition of undergraduate research. It's an inquiry or investigation conducted by an undergraduate student in collaboration with a faculty mentor, right? Blah, blah, blah. It's basically looking at those things. This definition morphs over time, and it should be nimble and it should change with the institution. But the question is, do you agree with this or not? And I'm very familiar with places where people disagree with some portion of it, particularly for us having freshman and sophomore, the original intellectual or creative contribution. Does it have to be original to the discipline, or does it have to be original to the student? And that's a question that I want you to think about and think about how you might define that. Is it new to us or is it new to them? Right. Next slide, please. All right, so some defining characteristics associated with undergraduate research are these four main categories. So mentorship, it's not an undergraduate research experience unless you as an individual faculty mentor are interacting with each student, whether you do it on a one-to-one basis or a course basis or even a program basis. It's very important for you to be part of that. How original it is depends on how you define that original intellectual contribution. The acceptability is what you're doing is acceptable to your discipline because it's part of the training of the discipline, even if your student is not a major in your discipline. And then it's really important to get them in that practice of dissemination, because one of the hindrances to most of the research that we do worldwide is getting it out to the public in a way that they can reach it and we can remove the jargon so it's understandable. So one of the big questions here then is how do each of these characteristics in all of their various forms apply to us at a two-year college? And that's something we need to define as well. Next slide. All right, so this comes from a paper written by Nancy Hensel, who was the president of the Council on Undergraduate Research for a long time. And one of the things that we look at here is that each one of these characteristics or dimensions of undergraduate research are on a continuum, right? Is this a student coming to you telling that they want to do a research project, or are you saying, I need this outcome and I need people to do it, right? Is it student initiated, faculty initiated? All students, just your top students, right? Broad and shallow, or narrow and deep? How much do you want to get into it? Is it based on your curriculum, or is it based on a co-curricular event? For example, I worked with the American Indian Science and Engineering Society club on campus to do a project growing the Three Sisters agricultural products and see what happens when in two different environments. And so there was a lot that went into that, but that had nothing to do with any course that I teach. Right. So those are some considerations as well. Collaborative, individual. We've talked about some of these multi or interdisciplinary or discipline based. So these are other considerations to think about that might be outside of your original description of what undergraduate research is. Next slide. And somebody please cut me off because I will talk forever about undergraduate research. So I don't want to cut Carolyn short at all. So there are many benefits to students.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Sorry, 2 minutes. Benefits to
We have
students.
time for some Q&A before Carolyn.
Okay, perfect. So there are many benefits to students. Next slide, please. Because I think we all are fairly familiar with the benefits to students, but benefits to faculty are much greater than you can possibly imagine, right? That kind of interaction really reinvigorates you, especially mid-career faculty, right? Our young faculty are coming in and they're overwhelmed simply by what they have to do. Our mid-career faculty can re-engage in their own discipline and in new ways of teaching through undergraduate research. And I already talked to you about how it can really improve our job satisfaction by giving us new ways to think. The key to this is that your students are not indoctrinated into your discipline, so they ask crazy questions, right? Because they're not embarrassed to ask them. And you're like, that's a really good question. Somebody could publish on that, right? And so it moves forward. And I know that psychology is heavily involved in this because they're always doing amazing things with their students. Next slide. So this is the biggest thing, and I can see Nora in my few pictures at the top of my screen too. It's important that our administration understand the power of undergraduate research to our campuses in order to support what we do. So we build a community of scholars, and I'm not sure if you know this as well, but throughout Maricopa Community Colleges, we have strong undergraduate research groups. We're all working as individuals and we're all recreating the wheel. If we could bring ourselves together in some way, we could really inform how we get this done through our enormous district. So Phoenix has Phoenix College has a huge community, as does Estrella Mountain. There's lots of things going on. If we could just kind of bring that soil together, we could really grow something special. Next slide, please. All right, so at a community college, we have this sort of developmental activity for skills and abilities. That's inherent in doing research, but we can't forget about that applied research component. Everywhere in our TC building and across everything that Michael Voss leads, those kids are doing real research that's going to help them in their workforce and continuing ed. We bring people back from communities as well, and then we can go on to that original intellectual contribution. Many of our students have published and carry their research with them to the university, which is fantastic. Next slide, please. All right, so why has this been done? Megan talked about this. It's a high impact practice, right? It's hugely impactful. Next slide. So there are educational benefits to students, right? Professional merits afforded to us. I've been all over the country representing Mesa Community College and Maricopa Community College District, talking about undergraduate research and the amazing things that we do on our campus for our students and with our students. But there are also huge scientific contributions that we may not get to see, but our students are taking with them and really influencing the way in which our own disciplines grow. Next slide, please.
Nicole, is it all right if we allocate the next 5 minutes towards Q&A?
Absolutely, because I think
You
I'm close to
provided
the
some-
end.
Yeah, really great information. And so I'd like to
Awesome.
make sure that folks can interact with you a bit. So we have 5
Absolutely.
minutes if you have questions for Nicole.
Go all the way to my last slide because it has my email address as well.
You got it.
Perfect. And then that way, if anybody
Oh,
needs to email me
beautiful.
directly, they can. So yeah, great. I am happy to answer any questions if you have them. I'm like the big cheerleader.
Well, this is Dean Voss. Kind of maybe a question will come out of this, but it's more just a comment. I'm a super fan of us doing, this research and inspiring students, and I'm a super fan, particularly of our doctoral prepared faculty and staff and administrators across this institution engaging in professional research. People who have the passion to do this.
Yes.
I just came back from AACC, and there's some doctoral prepared people who, like, if they want to do this research and get students to do it, it's amazing what we can learn when we have some people do some real literature research and applied research. So I would love something like that. I know we can't put posters about everything that we do everywhere, but just to create awareness in all of our academic buildings and academic areas about these opportunities. I walk through a lot of spaces, and you don't know unless you're connected to the individual faculty, go in the department office, who leads what. So I would just like to see more student awareness about this, because we are a learning institution. Whether we're trying to learn ourselves for our own journey and our own employees, or the mission of opening up minds for students in preparation for transfer. So this is amazing. We should celebrate it and actually just socialize it better.
Dean Voss, I am so glad you said that, because right now we're in the middle of a conversation throughout the undergraduate research committee on how to redesign our webpage that has components of what has happened, what could happen, what people are doing, and who's willing to work with students, so a student can shop for that experience for that undergraduate research friendly class and so we're not sure exactly how to do that yet. And maybe one of our first conversations is with the deans, because the deans know what they're their disciplines are doing. Well, for the most part, you can get it started. And we would like to do sort of one-on-one talks with some faculty and just get their story and put it on the webpage in a way that's easily consumable so that we can celebrate you and we can advertise to students what's available. Awesome. Thank you.
I love the idea of the connecting students, making it more public, connecting students to faculty who are actively engaged in research. I think about all the opportunities for faculty, for all employees. Thank you, Michael, for saying that, right? All employees who are seeking advanced degrees or who are published already and maybe want to engage in more research, that we really can think broadly about opportunities for students to connect with those faculty to advance the research. And also, I love the idea of hearing from students about what are the issues within different disciplines that they would be kind of interested in working with faculty to pursue.
Yeah.